Hello everyone, I'm Michaela Kathleen, and today I'm going to be doing my July reading wrap-up. And this month I read 3 books. One, a very exciting book that was in my 5-star TBR prediction tour that most of all the books on my TBR predicted to be 5 stars, and 2 mysteries, which is not really my top favorite genre, but I had a little bit of a mystery month. But starting with that 5-star prediction, we have Scythe by Neil Shusterman. This had been on my TBR for a long time, so I was super excited for it. The concept is so cool, and I've only read one Neil Shusterman book besides Scythe, but it is a childhood favorite, and that is Downsiders, which I feel is not as well known as his other books, but it's very good. So this one was highly anticipated, which as usual I feel like actually kind of made me enjoy it maybe a little bit less than I would have if I had gone in without all the anticipation, but I did still really enjoy it. So spoilers for the book will be talked about, and for those of you that don't know, this is a dystopian future in which death has been defeated. Nobody dies of disease or old age or most any injury anymore. But that leads to some population issues, and so the Scythes are created, people that are given permission to kill in order to keep the population under control. I really liked this quote at the beginning that made me think of Chaos Walking, which I read recently, so I'll just read it out real quick. This Scythe at the beginning of the book makes the main character keep this knife that he used to kill someone, and so he says to her, "But you must use it, so that it might remind you." Remind us of what? That a scythe is merely the instrument of death, but it is your hand that swings me. You and your parents and everyone else in this world are the wielder of scythes. We are all accomplices. You must share the responsibility. Which reminded me of Chaos Walking, how the town in Chaos Walking, when boys come of age, they make them murder people so that everyone is an accomplice. So this book kind of got my interest right away with its like philosophical thoughts and also the world building. Although some of the concepts of the book didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, like the fact that children are gleaned by the scythes. I don't get the point of defeating old age if we're then gonna allow kids to be killed by the scythes. Like, I feel like everybody should get their one full life and then you can start gleaning them, which like some of the information about the world building I feel like is given a little late, because a lot of my like confusion was around the fact that if the scythes are killing at like a normal rate of how death was before it was defeated, then why is nobody afraid of death? Why is the world the way it is? Why are they still gleaning children? All of these questions that just didn't really make sense, that made me think, well, this world really isn't much different from the original world if they're like gleaning people based on the statistics of death from the world before. It would seem like death is not that different then. It's just being done by humans instead of naturally. But it is explained pretty late into the book that scythes aren't actually gleaning people at the rate that people were dying in the original world. And all the scythes have different systems for how they decide who to glean and stuff like that. And it all just made it a little clearer and would have been nice earlier in the book. And also we're given later an explanation of the reason that they can glean at a much lower rate than people died in our world in the past is because the Thunderhead, the cloud, is using resources way better than regular people used to. So again, just an informational nugget that would have been nice earlier in the story. Really cleared up some questions for me. But moving on to the characters, I really liked all of the characters. My favorite was Scythe Faraday. He kind of gave me like wise old mentor trope feelings, and for some reason like Major Mr. Feeney from Boy Meets World feelings. And I just like how his lessons always were better than you thought they would be. Like, at first they usually come across as kind of cold and calculating and like not very nice. Like you think he's doing things to these kids just to be mean, but then he just flips the lesson all around and it becomes like a very gentle, good lesson. I also really enjoy the villain in this book. He's incredibly interesting. I mean, his viewpoint is really interesting. A lot of times with villains, you don't really see things from their viewpoint at all, but in this book, there are excerpts from the journals of the various Scythes, because they all have to keep journals, and so some of them are from the villain, and it's very interesting to get an insight into his thought process. I also really enjoyed Curie's journals. Hers were all very philosophical. I think the kids being given to Goddard and Curie for training after Faraday was a really good, interesting twist in the story. And honestly, I really think Citra would have fallen for Goddard because she seems just a little more aggressive than Rowan is. So I think she maybe would have fallen for Goddard. But the twist of the loser between our two main characters, for which one doesn't get to become a Scythe, having to be gleaned by the other one at the end, it was a good twist, added drama, but it just never really felt like there was a good reason for it to happen. It just didn't make sense. There was a lot of times where the Scythedom itself seemed very contradictory, and this was one of those places, as at some points it's like all about honor and compassion, but then there's this weird viciousness mixed in with it that feels very random at times, like Citra and Rowan having to glean each other, or killing that random salesperson for doing their job. So yeah, I feel like the Scythedom felt a little bit unbalanced in how it was portrayed. But yeah, overall the book was just full of twists and turns. So good. I didn't expect the villain to be defeated in this book, so I'm interested to see who the villain in the next book will be. But overall, I really liked the ending. It was very dramatic. I like where we left both of the main characters. I liked the name that Citra picked for herself once she became a Scythe. And yeah, again, I was probably overhyped for it, which I do feel like made me maybe enjoy it a little bit less. But it was still like really so good, so well put together. I'm very excited for the next one, and I was really stuck between giving it 4 or 5 stars. Obviously, I had that kind of pressure of predicting it to be 5 stars. So for now, I've given it a conservative 4.5, and we'll see how the series continues from here, which I will not be reading the rest of the series anytime real soon. I kind of am weird in that I like, even if a whole series is out, I'll still usually just read the first one and then wait a year before continuing the series, almost as though only the first one is out. I don't know why I enjoy doing that, but I do, so that's what I'm doing. But now, moving on to the second book that I read in July, which was Save Your Breath by Melinda Lee, which I got this one from the Scribbler subscription box, which is a subscription box for writers that I did maybe like 2 years ago before I started my channel. And this was the third box. This was from the third box that I got. So I'm finally read all of the books that I got from this subscription box from 2 years ago. But this one is a murder mystery, or rather a kidnapping mystery, which is not my most favorite genre. So this one was just kind of an okay book for me. I gave it 3 stars. I felt like it could have had a lot more to it. I felt like it could have been longer. I will note that this is the final book in a 6-book series, but it's a kind of companion mystery series following the same investigator team in every book, but with different cases, so I don't think it really matters that it wasn't the first book. I understood everything that was going on, but it maybe would have been helpful to have that background of the other 5 books. It had a pretty underwhelming ending, and I wonder if it would have been more underwhelming if I had read the other 5 books and this was the ending for an entire series rather than just the one book. But yeah, I just feel like there wasn't enough mystery, wasn't enough setup, there wasn't enough like red herrings and like interconnecting plot lines that I feel like should be in mysteries. I feel like when the kidnapper is revealed, it kind of comes from nowhere because we haven't met the kidnapper until he's revealed, but then it just turns out he's working with someone that we did meet earlier in the book. And so it made the kidnapper revealing feel underwhelming because you didn't really have a chance to guess that it was this person. And then also, there's this other storyline going on in which the person who has been kidnapped is a writer, and she's working on a book and she's researching real crime cases. And there's a case where she thinks the person who's been convicted might be innocent, meaning that the real killer is still out there, and maybe he doesn't like that she's digging into this. But then that doesn't turn out to be who kidnapped her, and that whole storyline becomes kind of moot, which also was kind of like, okay, that's underwhelming. So yeah, overall an underwhelming book, but I don't tend to get along with mysteries anyways. It was okay, it was enjoyable enough, but I felt like it could have been more. And now on to the final book that I read this month, which was Mystic River by Dennis Lehane. I was gonna rewatch the movie because this is one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time, but alas, I didn't get around to it. But this was my second time reading this book, and I've seen the movie countless times. But the writing in this book is so good. It's so moody and atmospheric, and like just has a really good sense of place, and the characters are so well done. It's just truly great writing. But I do kind of enjoy the movie more. There's obviously more detail in the book, and the writing is really good, so you do get that emotion and stuff, but there's just, you just don't quite get as emotional as you do watching the movie, watching Sean Penn grieving. He does it so well. I will say the book takes out a great line that's at the end of the movie, which I take issue with, because in the book and the movie, there's this character who is kidnapped as a kid, and he escapes and comes back, and then at the very end of the book, when he's an adult, he's disappeared, and one of his friends asks his other friend, who he suspects is responsible for the disappearance, when's the last time you saw Dave? And in the book, the character just says, I haven't seen him since last night, so I had nothing to do with this. Whereas in the movie, he says, last time I saw Dave was in the car that he was kidnapped in all those years ago, because he's implying that a different person came back from that kidnapping, which I really liked that line in the movie, and in the book, it's not there. But some of the character motivations are more clear in the book, because obviously books can more clearly explain what's going on in characters' heads. Like, the character Dave injures his hand, and he gives different explanations to different people for why his hand is injured. And in the movie, you just go, oh, how dumb is he? He's giving different stories to different people. They might figure out that he's lying. Whereas in the book, it kind of explains his thought process of, oh, it doesn't look like this person believed my story. It's not a good enough story. I better come up with a better one for the next person who asks. But then weirdly, some character motivations are less clear in the book, which is annoying, and they're more important things to explain, I feel. For example, why the murderer murdered the person that they murdered. In the movie, the murderers are giving a really good motivation for why they did it, whereas in the book, the cops kind of come up with their own explanation of just like, oh, they were just dumb kids playing around. And it's like, that's not a very good motivation. Like, it's probably a pretty realistic one, but it's like, oh, okay, random murder. Great. Very interesting story there. So yeah, overall, I like the movie better personally, but the book is so good. The writing is so good. Very impressive writing. A 5-star read and a 5-star movie. So yeah, that is all the books that I read in July. I'm very excited to have finally started the Scythe series. I will be picking it up next year, and glad to have reread an old favorite. Let me know down below what you've been reading in July. I hope you enjoyed watching, and now on to the quote for today's video. And today I have the kind of long essay written to Mr. Vernon from The Breakfast Club. And it goes, Dear Mr. Vernon, we accept the fact that we had to sacrifice a whole Saturday in detention for whatever it was we did wrong. What we did was wrong. But we think you're crazy to make us write an essay telling you who we think we are. What do you care? You see us as you want to see us, in the simplest terms, in the most convenient definitions. you see us as a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. Correct? That's the way we saw each other at 7 this morning. We were brainwashed. Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.